I'm Leo Walder for Kit Guru. It's Leo Says, third week of November, a foul, wet November in the UK, tipping with rain at the moment. And I'm going to do a certain amount of what the helling and general grumpiness. But before I do that, I'm going to do look at this, which is this graphics card here, which is an Asus ROG Poseidon Platinum GTX 1080 Ti. So it's a GTX 1080 Ti with a socking great big heatsink, but it also has these two G-Core unions. So you can either use the thing in a conventional air-cooled manner with the Asus cooler, or you can plumb your custom loop into it. And the reason I've got it in my hands is because I'm working on a motherboard review which involves a certain amount of liquid cooling. It's an Asus motherboard, so it makes perfect sense to add this into the equation. Looking forward to playing with that. It is one of the most expensive graphics cards I've actually personally used. It's got a list price of something like £999 in the UK. I found it on sale for about £850, which is a stock GTX 1080 Ti will set you back £700 for a Founders Edition. This runs somewhat faster than stock because of the aftermarket cooler, 1600 megahertz, and I expect it'll run a little bit faster than that with a bit of persuasion. But nonetheless, a mighty graphics card and something that's brought a smile to my lips. It's something I'm looking forward to playing with properly, so hurrah! So that's the sort of positive upbeat part of the thing. In the general grumpiness and what's the world coming to, two things, Apple and Amazon. Let's start with the Amazon thing. News that Amazon Key has caused problems, or there are potential problems, or there's a hack or some such. I first had to look up what the heck Amazon Key was. I was completely unfamiliar with it. It turns out that in certain cities in the US, as a trial kind of thing, you can, if you choose, allow couriers, Amazon couriers, for example, to deliver a package to your house while you're out, or your apartment or whatever, while you're out and about at work. The idea is that you grant them access to your home security system. They turn up, hit a button on their smartphone, the door opens in, they walk, drop the parcel, off they go, and you go, that's terrible, absolutely lousy idea. The system is secured by allowing your home system, which has webcams and such like, to monitor and send them across the internet and all the rest of it. That while the courier's in the house, when they've hit the let me in button, the system monitors them double closely. So you've got a record of exactly what's gone in your absence. And you go, okay, but it turns out that if someone sits there and floods the Wi-Fi network with packets of data, the system basically locks up. So the webcams will have a freeze frame from the last good moment, and thereafter anything can go in your absence. You go, oh, why would I want this? This is so Amazon can deliver packages. And, well, what you do surely is you have the equivalent of a garden shed or a box outside your house. I've heard this with other couriers. You have a box outside, the lid is open, it's got like a snap lock on it. They drop the package in, snap the lid down, job done. Obviously, if a second courier turns up, that's not so great. Or, as we do around these parts, you leave it with the neighbours. Many possibilities here. The idea of giving people access to your home by just pressing a button, I'm not at all sure. I'm really not. I know Airbnb people often do this. You have a one-off code, you turn up, you let yourself in, you never see another human being. Yeah, okay, but that's not your home. That's not where your stuff is. That's a place people are staying in. There might be trouble, but it's just... Anyway, I'm really wary about this. This sounds to me highly questionable. And the idea of relying on the internet, the web, cloud storage, online cams in your home, it just seems to me like a little bit of a hack here, a little bit of a hack there, and your entire home is online constantly and continuously. And if people are coming in and robbing all your stuff, you wouldn't know otherwise. It seems highly dubious. It seems like a very strange solution to how do you deliver a package when I'm out. Basically, if I trust you enough to have a key to my home, I don't need to have a cam on you while you're there. If I don't trust you enough to be in my home without a cam, you shouldn't be allowed in the first place. I think that's about as far as it goes. And while I'm at it, Amazon Echo and Dot, the idea of microphones that are monitoring everything that's said in the house, it's as good as Siri and Hello Google and all the rest of it. It's just, ugh. Anyway, that's the grumpy old man thing going on there. And in slightly more humorous news, Apple Face ID has been hacked twice this week. Twice. It's only been out for 5 minutes. The first time was someone being a bit sophisticated. They made a 3D printed mask model of someone's face. So the face had been keyed in, allowed, unlocked in the Apple. The model was in the phone, and then you showed a mask which obviously looked very similar, and it was enough to convince the phone that that was legit. You can understand how that worked. But more recently, we've seen a woman who's got an iPhone 10. She's put it up to her face. She's done the facial recognition thing. It's got the model in the phone. Her lad, who's much younger than her, I mean, he looks like he's 8 or maybe 10, comes along, picks up the phone, it unlocks. Now, there's obviously a family resemblance thing going on, but he does not look the same as her. He just does not. And this is obviously to do with algorithms and how the model works. And apparently the family's gone back and they've redone the owner of the phone, the woman, has redone the facial recognition thing in better light. So presumably it's a more accurate model, and now apparently the lad cannot get into it. And this is all about false positives, false negatives. Because quite clearly, if you pick the phone up and 5 times out of 10 it doesn't want to unlock for you, that's really bad news. And if it's a family resemblance thing that trips it. So if my brother can pick up my iPhone 10, not that I'm going to spend £1,100 on the phone anytime soon, but if my brother can pick up my phone and unlock it, it's not the end of the world. If I pick it up, it doesn't unlock, I get annoyed. So I can understand why they've gone on the side of caution. Nonetheless, it does not look good for Apple, and that is a terribly expensive phone. This is the headline feature of this phone, and it's not going well for them. No doubt they'll tweak the algorithms. I'm sure it'll get better. Machine learning, cloud, and so on and so forth, they'll play their part, but not really looking good. Graphics. Nvidia's just done a call announcing their Q3 financials, 9th of November, and they are epic. During the call, the boss fella Jensen Huang was asked if he had any comment about Intel's renewed interest in the graphics space. This Intel H series mobile with AMD Radeon graphics, Polaris by the look of it, thing. And he was quoted as saying during this financials call, it's not in the financials report naturally, first of all, Raja leaving AMD is a great loss for AMD, and it's a recognition by Intel probably that the GPU is just incredibly important right now, said the man from the graphics company. And he went on to say that Nvidia has like 5,000 software engineers working on making their GPUs just absolutely brilliant. I think it's safe to say what he's saying is, yeah, they might have the AMD chip going with the Intel processor, but there's a lot more to it than that. We've got that infrastructure in place. If Intel's going to have 5,000 software engineers or AMD's going to have 5,000 on this project, great. But do they? And I think we can suspect from the tone of what Jensen Huang, a man who is amazingly positive, that man takes Upbeat to whole new levels. But I think we can take it that the answer is no. Nvidia's got more people on the case than Intel or AMD in the graphics space. How much longer that will be the case remains to be seen. I mean, Intel has colossal resources. They want to do a thing, they generally, eventually one or another do it. But here we go. Meanwhile, the amounts of money that Nvidia has made, huge. So quarter on quarter, Q3 2017, Q3 2016, went from 2.2 billion in 2016 to 2.6 billion in 2017. That's significant. Net income rose from 540 million to 840 million. And looking through the rest of their figures, I mean, I'm not an accountant, but skimming through them, all debt and turnover and shares and so on and so forth, if they've got any funny business going on, it's hidden away very deeply indeed. On the face of it, everything looks to be absolutely amazing for Nvidia. Gross profits are a shade under 60%, like 59.4%. They were last year, they are this year. They're obviously just selling a truckload of GPUs at huge margins, and they're very happy. Nvidia have got every reason to be really happy right now. How long that continues remains to be seen, but they are having a stunning 2017. By contrast to that $840 million in Q3 that they made as net profit, AMD in the same quarter made 71 million net profit, which is funny because I saw a figure they have 20 million, but I think that may have been Q2. Which by AMD's standards is actually pretty good going because they have a habit of losing a lot of money. So the fact AMD's made money in 2 quarters is hurrah, but it's just keeping them ticking over realistically, not great. And the fact that Vega is a shame. But as things stand, AMD has made some money. Nvidia is making a great deal of money and very upbeat. Other people making money, I don't know what Samsung is making actually. You'd think they're making fortunes. I mean, let's face it, they're a great big chunk of South Korean economy. But memory prices are high and they're due to rise further in the rest of 2017. We saw figures 10 to 20% projected rise, which is a great shame because I thought last week the talk was of increased production and prices dropping. never mind. That's a shame. So prices look to be up. SSDs aren't getting any cheaper. That's obviously NAND flash, slightly different thing. And yet we've just had an award, CES 2018, that the organisers sent through a whole bunch of things, like awards that are coming up. Samsung's won 2 for flash memory, one for GDDR6 and one for a new form factor of SSD. Let's do the SSD first because that's relatively straightforward. So they've got an 8TB server SSD, uses NGSFF, next generation form factor. Basically M.2, the chewing gum sort of stick thing, one screw at the end, contact at the other, which is typically 22mm wide, and this is 30.5mm wide, 110mm long, so that's the longer of the M.2s, are often 80. So it's a long M.2, but it's 20.5 rather than 30.5 rather than 22, so that's about a third wider, which obviously means more space for memory chips. So it's a bit of a shame that really, because that means that Samsung's not increasing the density of the chips. They're just putting more chips on the thing. And I don't have a price for that 8TB, and I don't know why it's got an award actually, thinking about it. 8TB SSD probably cost a fortune. Servers, not for us, we haven't got a slot for it anyway. GDDR6. I can't decide if this is interesting. So Samsung has been given an award for the CES 2018 for the fact they have these chips in development, and it was just a rendering of a single chip. So the significant thing is that GDDR5 runs at 1.5 volts and GDDR5X also 1.5, GDDR6 1.35 volts, so less power equals good. Apparently it's running faster than they expected in terms of gigatransfers. So GDDR5X has 2 states, low and high speed, and also a faster state, which is up to twice the speed of GDDR5. So apparently it's running up to 14 gigatransfers, and you get GDDR5 will typically run at 8 gigatransfers. But I think you'll find a lot of 5X is actually only a bit faster than 8, maybe 10 or 11 gigatransfers. GDDR6 is more. It's running at 16 gigatransfers, so that's twice. Basically, it's true 5X is the way I'm interpreting it, and at lower voltage. So that's a good thing, and that's a good thing. And yet, truth be told, I kind of don't care, because all I want from graphics memory is to not be a bottleneck. I want the core to be able to do its stuff, and then the memory and the memory controller just get out of the way and let it all work. That's what we want. We know what happens when you have bad problems with memory, or problems with memory rather. We just don't want the problems. As long as it works, how they achieve it is of less interest. If it's lower power, obviously that's a good thing. The lower the power required, the better. Lower the voltage, the better. It was notable with the GDDR6 that there was no mention about memory controller and the width of the memory controller. It just wasn't mentioned. It's purely about the chip. So we basically have not all the information that we want. So for the moment we have to sit back and go, okay, might be of interest. And each chip was 8 gigabits, therefore 1 gigabyte per chip in the die. So therefore, if you want 8 gigabytes, you only need 8 chips. If you want 16, you want 16 of them. So that should all be doable. That's all in the realms of a standard graphics card. And that says, because we're expecting volume production of GDDR6 in H1 2018, which is a fairly wide target, given they're getting an award in the second week of 2018. That says that when Nvidia brings out Volta sometime in the first half of 2018, and you really would hope it's at CES, but conceivably therefore Computex, Lord help us, surely, please, sooner, then we would expect to see the desktop chips will use GDDR6 rather than 5 or 5X, and the super high-end versions, the GV100s and such like, the ones that just cost 15,000, will use probably HBM2, continue to. That's the high-end stuff, but on the desktop, GDDR6, and we don't expect to see it until we see Volta. I've got a question. Here's my question. One of the features of AMD Threadripper is it has colossal amounts of PCI Express, which you can use for graphics or for storage. And AMD promised when they announced Threadripper that they would allow NVMe RAID, and they have indeed released this. So if you have a number of NVMe M.2 SSDs, 2 or 3 or 4 of them, and the ability to plug them into your motherboard or a riser card, and you've got Threadripper, you can put them together in RAID, and you can get massive, epic amounts of data transfer, which is nice. The thing being is most M.2 SSDs are pretty darn fast anyway. Most people do not have an M.2 SSD and think I want it to be even faster. But in terms of geek prawn, well, bigger numbers are better. But they make a feature of the fact it's bootable. And this has just made me scratch my head. It really has. Because if it's bootable, that means it's your, in old parlance, your C drive, your Windows drive. And I hate the idea of RAID 0 striped as a bootable drive, because anything goes wrong, it all goes up in flames. I don't mind the idea of a data drive, a scratch drive, a gaming drive that's a RAID array, because if it goes bang, you just rebuild it. You don't lose anything. Video editing is an absolute pain for data transfer. It just wants as much as you can possibly chuck at it, certainly for 4K. So the idea of a RAID array there, a RAID SSD array, yeah, I don't personally find it necessary, but the boss fella at Kit Guru does. He uses a Thunderbolt 3 external RAID array, says it's absolutely amazing. It's the bootable part I just really don't get. And this is one of those I'm asking you things. Would you rely on RAID? I'm talking about RAID 0 striped, not mirrored or indeed 5 or 6 or 10. I'm talking about RAID 0. Would you personally use RAID 0 for a mission critical drive such as your boot drive? Answers below, and if so, would you be particularly fussed whether it was SSD or hard drive? Hard drive striping obviously is to increase the speed, SSD to increase the speed. They're already very fast. Do you personally use RAID 0? Would you use RAID 0? Have you used RAID 0? Have you got any horror stories to share, or was it absolutely lovely? That's my question to you. Comments below, please, because I'm not so sure about this one, and I don't think it's for me. I might do the striping thing, but not on a bootable drive. And another thing, this comes under the heading of I had no idea. An operating system called Minix, M-I-N-I-X, which is a version of Unix. Apparently, every Intel chipsets for the last goodness knows how long use the Intel management engine. So you install your chipset drivers, you also install the ME driver. We all know this. I was not aware that the management engine is a small part of the chipset or the platform controller hub as it has become these days. That ME, that management engine, runs on its own operating system called Minix. And Minix is under a license from the University of California at Berkeley. Was developed by a chap called Professor Andrew Tannenbaum. And the significant thing about Minix is, apart from that it has a very small footprint, is that the license means you can do what the heck you like with it. If you want to use it, you can just use it. You don't have to tell anybody. You don't have to give any credit. You don't have to pay any money. Just do what you want with it. And that's exactly what Intel did. Apparently Intel put out feelers to a bunch of people, including this Professor Tannenbaum a few years ago, to ask about the operating systems that they had, and they confirmed that their license was do what you like, and he said yes, absolutely. That's the last he heard. And then recently some security researchers said the Intel ME that's in the platform controller hubs, we've cracked it. We can get in it, we can do all sorts. That's significant because the idea of the ME is that system administrators can do things like configure business systems remotely. They can sit on the network and they can wipe them all, they can re-image them, they can do all sorts of stuff. If you've got laptops that are out and about, they can disable them. They can make the laptops report back to base, and if they don't get a response within a certain number of attempts, they assume it's stolen, or better safe than sorry, and they shut it down. And the laptop has to come back to base and be turned back on again. The ME is a powerful thing. It is way below the operating system in the hardware-software stack. So the fact that someone's saying we can get in there and we can do whatever we like with it, we can completely control your system, is just one of those things. Professor Tannenbaum's response was, jolly nice of Intel to have told me they've used my thing. I mean, they're not obliged to, but it would have been courteous and civil, wouldn't it? Could have written me a letter or something. I don't think he's actually expecting money, but I mean, let's face it, Intel could afford it. But anyway, a bit of courtesy, I think, is what he was after. And the two things come out of this is that I had never heard of Minix, an operating system. I certainly had no idea it's inside, my current PC, any number of my test systems I put together. I had no idea it's running, not a clue. And that potentially it's got a black hole at the heart of it. A black hole that may or may not be attacked by somebody in a way I do not understand, about which I can do absolutely nothing. I mean, I assume I'm relying on an Intel update and some sort of firmware flash, But what a curious state of affairs. So there's a new operating system, and it turns out I already use it. And it may well be the most popular operating system on the planet, which is a very strange thing indeed. I mean, I saw that claim. I don't see how. Surely Android or something inside your television. No, Android. It's got to be Android. So there we have it. If you like this video, thumbs up. If you don't, thumbs down. If you're more from Kit Guru, click to subscribe. I'm Leo Walder for Kit Guru. This is Leo Says.